To me, writing, now I hated English in college. I hated writing, I'm not going to lie. But as I started writing quarterly letters, it's the most important thing, because when you're writing, what's in your head and versus what's you're writing is completely different, and so to me, writing is super important. And what we do is maybe I can talk about how you answer the questions on the checklist. We try not to put any personal assumptions. So what we're doing is maybe we're quoting a source, like an article written about the business. If we're answering a question like on, for example, on the integrity of management, that I spoke about earlier. We're sourcing the example, and so that's kind of what we're doing. Is we're basically using what we call either evidence or track record. Evidence is, for example, a story I like to tell is I was investing in Baldor Electric, which is an electric motor manufacturer based in Fort Smith, Arkansas. And the CEO invited me to a customer event where they were launching a new product, and I went down there and I was talking, asking about pricing power. I said, "Does your business have pricing power?" And the customer said yes. Yes, they increased prices. The distributor said yes. And later I learned it was like 5% of the products had pricing power. And I started thinking, I don't think these people are trying to deceive me. And so the answer, actually, the evidence is actually in the 10K. It's in the management discussion analysis section. If you look at the changes in gross profit, that's where it is. They'll tell you we increased prices, it generated this X amount of gross profit dollars, and or increase the gross profit margin by this amount. So actually, that's the evidence. It's right there. Now, if it's not there, then we just don't know. If a business has pricing, we just basically say we don't answer it. So, track record is more like the management competence, are they good capital allocators? So if we're looking at Western Union, under First Data as an example, they were not, there wasn't a track record that we can look at because the capital allocation decisions were done at the First Data level. And so, we have to wait, to answer that, and then we answer it with a track record. But the writing is very important because the checklist becomes a written report, and it's a great feedback mechanism because if you think about, investing, we're basically in the business of thinking, right? And our output is a decision, an investment decision. So anything that makes your investment decision-making process better is just very helpful. So for example, one of the areas that I continually underestimated, looking back, in my written record, was operating leverage, the degree of operating leverage. So in other words, what impact on a high fixed cost business did a change in revenues have on the bottom line? So looking back, I would say, well, if revenues decrease 10%, the operating income will drop 20%. And in reality, it dropped 60, or 70%. And so I kind of started saying, trying to learn why was it that I continually made this mistake, and how do I calculate the fixed costs of a business, and what and especially now, again, it's good to have that question there, especially with the fixed cost businesses. It's at the top of my list, as far as reviewing that. So by having that written report, that's really what it should serve, and it should be answered with evidence. So conference call archives, looking back at conference calls on how management is answering questions. We'll quote management to answer a certain question, and kind of source that document. And so it really is not about, I think the biggest mistake is people will go through the questions, they'll go read a lot of 10Ks, they'll read articles, whatever they do, and then they start answering the questions, and they just kind of write them, and their personal assumptions are entering in this process, like the pricing power example, or you may say it has a competitive advantage, or it may not, or the industry may be growing or not growing. So you have to cite actual facts, evidence, track record to be answering these things, rather than this personal assumption. That's where most people, I think, make the mistake, is because you really just can't be answering these questions from, just after reading a bunch of stuff. You really have to start quoting it from different sources and finding that what I would call like the first source, the customer mouth, whatever they're saying.